Good afternoon, all. Cropperino from Ohio, good afternoon. See. Zuku Vizkayabo. Still have belly to talk. You still here? Yeah, I'm nothing else to do. Don't worry, I won't be on too long today because today is football. You should be asking the members of your government not to. Well, they don't talk. Because when was the last time your government had a post cabinet press briefing? When was the last time your prime minister appeared at a post cabinet press briefing? 6 murders in less than 24 hours. You still here to come and challenge me if I want to talk? You should be ashamed to associate yourself with the UNC. Natalie Farrier, good afternoon. Petal Felix, Helen Farrier, Trotman, Arlene Lewis, Sarah Richards, Jennifer Frederick, hey Jenny, Jennifer Ashby Okoli, Jamun Alemu, good afternoon. Margaret Mutter, Sarah Richards, Jenny Cupid, good afternoon to all of you guys. Camille Dean, Kathy Best, Felix Hospitalis. Yeah, so I said I won't be on too long today. I know today is football and World Cup finals, and I imagine people would want to settle into that. I noted that your Prime Minister, well, I guess she's going to be looking at the World Cup final today because she put out a statement this morning, or her social media page put out a statement this morning talking about the power of the World Cup and all the things that it does and brings people together. Somebody went up on ChatGPT and pull up something and post it out there. What is notable is that, as I said before, 6 murders in less than 24 hours. Nothing from the Prime Minister, no concerns about that. Nothing to reassure the population that despite the fact that we are under a state of emergency, we have triple murders and double murders. In fact, a double murder took place in her constituency last night. But nothing on that. Nothing from the Minister of Homeland Security, nothing from the Commissioner of Police to reassure the citizens. This is an anomaly. Nothing. And one would have expected that when you have a triple murder, which took place yesterday morning in the one of the Laventille constituencies, normally you would hear about potential backlash, reprisal killings, which would, in the past, would have led to a state of emergency. But we're in a state of emergency, so what do you do now? How do you treat with that? If there are to be reprisal killings for those 3 killings that took place yesterday. Well, we leave that up to Commissioner Guevara and his men, right? When PNM host cabinet briefing, it was blah, blah, blah. Your government performing? Really? You're not even having post-cabinet press briefing, my friend. In shame. At least Dr. Roll used to present himself regularly. When was the last time? It's been over a year since your Prime Minister presented herself at a post-cabinet press briefing. She was always available to talk to the media, and she was in opposition, Every time a camera in her face or a microphone, everybody's suffering. People can't afford to put food on the table, can't afford to pay bills, can't afford to send their children to school. Now she avoids the camera like a plague. We only hearing from her via Facebook, TikTok, X. But you always criticize Dr. Ali. UNC supporters and purely shameless, hypocrites. I'll continue. Anyway, so I was making the point that the Prime Minister thought it more prudent to put out a statement with regard to World Cup finals than speak to the issue of crime in the country. So we're at about 215, 216 murders or more, minimum 215, 216, which I think is a little, well, it's more murders than days in the year, sorry. And I think we are above where we were last year, or around the same time. So we know, based on the trajectory of the murders so far for the year, there will be no boasting at the end of this year about 42% decline in murders and UNC would take note that your base year is 2025. So any comparisons that would be done at the end of this year would be against last year when they were in office for the majority of the time. 8 out of 12 months they were in office last year. So, and with what seems to be a perpetual state of emergency, they told us SOE is the solution. Police could do things under SOE that they can't do without one. Really? And the murder rate looking the same as it was last year? Okay. But for them, once it stays under 600, or once it stays under 624, they're good. So if it ends up at 620, once it's less than what the highest was under the PNM, they could continue to boast and say, well, the highest murder rate took place under the PNM. So they're good with that. They're good with that. And while they promised last year, in 6 months, crime would be under control. In 6 months, murders will be thing of the past. Really? It's been more than 6 months. We are almost on 15 months. And the murders continue. But people like Zuku will tell you, the government performing. Really? If the PNM was in power and we had the same number of murders, he would have been among the loudest voices talking rubbish about Rowley must go and Hines must go. But these hypocrites want to come and tell you the government working. PNM was in power. Look at what they're doing. They're decimating Point Lisa's industrial estate. Nutrien shut down. Methanex shut down. 2 plants. But you see not decimated. No, that is performance according to Zuku. Yeah, his government performing. But when the bar is so low for performance, with these hypocrites, yeah, ridiculous. Anyway, we're on with the refinery Zuku. It's been 15 months. More than 20% of your government's term has gone. Still being here, nothing about the refinery now. All the people who knocking on Munilal door, and he'll have to change his door because the amount of investors that pounding down his door to come and invest. What's going on? Anyway, so let me just touch on 2 issues here that have been dominating the news while I was away. Or it seems when I'm out of the country is when things tend to happen. But I see an article in today's newspaper speaking to this issue of the AI data centers. And I would have spoken at the PNM's press conference last week, Thursday. And I made the point that timelines were important. Timelines in respect to when did conversations regarding this AI data center begin? Who approached who? Did these investors approach the government of Trinidad and Tobago with a proposal, or did the government of Trinidad and Tobago go out looking for these investors? And if they did so, what was the basis? What was the impetus for that? Right? Is it the Minister of Public Admin and AI? Was he instrumental in this whole proposal? I just asking the question, because when they created the Ministry of Public Admin and AI, people were asking, where did AI come from? What's that about? We had a whole Ministry of Digital Transformation, which the PNM created, and they got rid of that, and they created this Ministry of Public Admin and AI. Well, public admin was always there, and they added AI to it, and people couldn't understand the rationale for this whole AI. So, is it that the technological thrust of this government is focused primarily on AI and not other aspects of digital transformation? Well, it seems now this might be pointing to the answer to that question. And there's the article in today's Guardian. It reads, major AI data center already in works in TNT, but location a secret. Procurement record shows state-equipped facility even as it signs new agreements. So that answers my question from Thursday in terms of timeline. How long has this conversation been going on? Who started this whole conversation? And one of the interesting things in this article speaks to this company called Hummingbird AI. People have been asking about and expressing concerns, saying where does company come from based on the research that they have done. This company has no history, it has no assets, it has nothing, but government signing MOU with them. And it says here, Hummingbird AI formed to pursue TNT opportunity. As concerns about data centers and TNT mount, Hummingbird AI Holdings LLC founder Mark Farrell said the company was formed specifically to pursue the Trinidad and Tobago opportunity. Now, a man is not going to go and incorporate a company to pursue a project unless it is that he knows that there is some there. All right? I'm not just going to spend money to incorporate a company, whatever it entails and so on, unless it is that I know that whatever I'm going to pursue, that there is going to be some merit there or some benefit to be had. So it suggests that conversations were had with somebody in Trinidad and Tobago before Mr. Farrell decided to go and form and to incorporate this company, and then to come to Trinidad. And so I asked the question on Thursday in the press conference: does the Minister of Public Admin and AI or anybody else in the government have any relationships, whether professional or personal, whether indirectly or directly, with any of the principals of any of the three companies with whom they signed MOUs for these AI data centers? I haven't gotten an answer yet. Now, I'm familiar with Mr. Farrell. He is a St. Mary's College past student and old boy. In fact, he was in my year group. And Mr. Minister Dominic Smith also went to St. Mary's College as well. Mr. Farrell is also the founder of 10 to 1 Rum. He was a former vice president at Starbucks International before he decided to venture into the alcohol arena. Right? So it seems now that he's wishing to transition from that to AI. I don't know what his background in AI is, but I know AI is a specialty of Minister Smith. We know that Minister Smith, or several persons who are acquainted with Mr. Smith, have been placed on state boards, persons who have backgrounds in AI, persons who have backgrounds with respect to digital technology. Some of these persons are on boards of TSTT and boards of iGovTT. We're familiar with these persons. And as I said at the press conference, information comes to us. Just as when the UNC was in opposition and things used to come in their mailbox, and people used to talk to opposition MPs, pusu, as Julian John loves to say. They're talking to us pusu too, and telling us things. We just asking the questions. All right? So the company is incorporated in Delaware, United States. While members of our consortium have been collaborating on AI infrastructure and data center projects for some time, Trinidad and Tobago opportunity itself was only conceived about a year ago. A year ago. So that would take us to about July last year, June last year, after this government came into office. So soon. That's why I said timelines are very, very important. We asked the question again: what was the motivation for the creation of a Ministry of AI and getting rid of the Ministry of Digital Transformation with specific focus on AI? And seems the question is now being answered. So this petition calling for signatures of persons who are opposed to these AI data centers, who are calling for more information and consultation by the government on these AI data centers, has crossed well over 20,000 persons, 20,000 signatures, verified signatures. And your beloved Prime Minister has the audacity, the temerity, and the unmitigated gall to dismiss these citizens and their concerns by saying, well, listen, the country is a dump. And all of a sudden, you all have concerns about environmental issues. Look at the state of the place. There's garbage everywhere. The drains, there's garbage in the drains, and this, that, the other, and the next. Get off all your high horse. You all are opposing things that you know nothing about. I would want to ask Mrs. Pasabi, so what did you know about the smelter plant? What did you know about smelter plants at all? When in 2009, 2010, you all launched a campaign to get rid of the Alutrin smelter plant, which was part of the PNM's diversification thrust. And the opposition to smelter plants, even back then and today, certainly was not as great as it is to these AI data centers. In fact, I believe there is some sort of protest across the United States in some 51 cities across the US this weekend opposing data centers. And we continue to see more and more documentaries and information coming out with persons who are opposed to these AI data centers that pose threats to water supply, constrain electricity supply. We already have a water problem in this country. And that is why I made the point again at the press conference when the Minister of Public Admin and AI said, well, don't worry. All we signed was MOUs. There's nothing concrete. We haven't made any firm decisions as yet. These MOUs are simply to provide a framework for further discussion on a pathway forward. So nothing has been agreed to yet. But that contradicts what his colleague, the Minister of Public Utilities, Mr. Padarat, has said, that they have identified locations for these data centers. They have identified where the water will come from. They have identified where the electricity will come from. So this seems more or less to be a done deal. So your beloved Prime Minister, who has declared Trinidad and Tobago to be a dump, has decided she wants to take it up one step further and turn Trinidad and Tobago into a dumping ground for things that the developed world does not want. They have the land space. They have more water than we do. They have better electricity grids than we do. They have all of the infrastructure and the resources that are necessary to facilitate these AI data centers. But yet still, their citizens are rejecting it. We don't have the kind of land space that the United States has. So why not do it up there? Why is Hummingbird AI and others wanting to come to Trinidad? My colleague Marvin Gonzalez, the MP for Aruca Lupino, spoke to that issue on Thursday. Cheap electricity and cheap water, which is subsidized, so that when these entities come here to utilize our water supply and our electricity, which is subsidized, it means, therefore, that your government will be providing these facilities, these entities with subsidized utilities, which you, the taxpayer, must bear the cost for. Okay. It goes on. So I was making the point. This opportunity itself was only conceived about a year ago, and the Delaware entity was established expressly for that purpose. So it seems conversations were had a year ago. Assurances were given that, hey, don't worry, the government have your back. We're looking for investment. We're desperate. We're thirsty. We promised thousands of jobs. We're firing thousands of people, because it's about 1 year ago that CPEP and URP and forestry was shut down in July of last year. So we're going to fire thousands of people. So here what? It ain't looking too good for us, So we need something. So, and we have a Ministry of AI. What you need? What approvals do you need? Once you can round up the capital, come through. We got you. Yes, there might be some opposition, but the hell with that. We in charge. We in charge. Okay? So people could gripe and complain all they want, and we will just say is the opposition, is the PNM that is against development. And we will leave it at that, and don't worry, our supporters will come out and support us. But even some of the UNC's own supporters are against these AI data centers from an environmental standpoint. But it is good that they've identified Debe as one of the first places that they are going to house these data centers. Yeah, put it in all your constituency. Because remember with the smelter plant, they thought, smelter will kill all you. You'll get cancer and dead. No evidence of that. I didn't see any large number of persons protesting all over the world and protesting over the United States as they are against these data centers for smelter plants. So we don't want smelter here, get cancer and kill you, you're dead. I didn't see that. All these documentaries and all of these talk shows, not just in the United States, but in Canada and around the world, that are speaking out against these AI data centers. Didn't see all of that for smelter, but yet still the UNC hypocrites, the UNC faithful, they came out in their numbers. We want no smelter, no smelter. First thing they did when they came into office was cancel the smelter. And it may yet cost you, the taxpayers, millions of dollars when the Chinese finish with us. Right? The Chinese who invested a ton of money into that project before it was shut down. But where are all the hypocrites from the UNC who are against this matter. Where are you today? All of you who living in DB, you all have a problem with that. You want development in DB? Well, okay, you all take it down there. We got up here. Several companies, including Fortune 500 companies such as Amazon and Alphabet, are incorporated in Delaware because of the state corporation's friendly laws and tax benefits. The state does not require the names of shareholders of LLC members to be listed on public information documents and does not impose corporate income tax on companies that are formed there but conduct business elsewhere. So you could incorporate. There's no need for you to post the names of who shareholders are. So for all we know, you could probably have some shareholders from Trinidad. But since there is no obligation in Delaware to publish that information or to provide that information, well, you may never know. We just know about Mr. Farrell. But who is backing Mr. Farrell? So again, we're asking for timelines. Mr. Farrell has provided us with a one-year timeline. So since last year, these conversations have been ongoing. This is a government that every time a potential investor just presents themselves or even send a letter to say, hey, we're interested, an email. Oh yes, we had to tell the whole world, look. But for a whole year, this was kept under wraps. A whole year, no revelation, no publication of any photos of anybody sitting down with anybody to have discussions, as they love to do. None of that took place. We didn't know anything. Only when MOUs were signed. And just so, they decided, okay, well, we will publish this now. And you have half the government telling us, well, don't worry, nothing is in concrete yet. These are just exploratory discussions. And then another side saying, well, hey, this is basically a done deal. Prime Minister not willing to hear anything you all have to say, those of you who are in opposition. Okay? All she hears $5 billion US investment. And hey, we in that. Because it seems everything else that they've been doing and really panning out. This earthquake in Venezuela, that kind of set back some things with respect to the energy sector. Provided them with a convenient excuse to say, well, because of what's happening in Venezuela with the aftermath of the earthquake, we can't really send the delegation right now to Venezuela to have discussions on energy because that's not a priority for the government. Okay. So now we see that because of the humanitarian relief that was sent across there last week or so, last few days, apparently Madam Persona non grata supposedly had a conversation with Delcy and they exchanged pleasantries via letters. We'll see where that goes. It goes on to say for Farrell, his proposal is for a large-scale AI infrastructure campus in TNT. Country has a long history of operating complex industrial and downstream energy infrastructure supported by a highly skilled engineering and technical workforce. Combined with competitive access, here it is, competitive access to natural gas, globally competitive industrial electricity rates, just as Marvin said, subsidized electricity rates, which you, the taxpayer, will pay for. So while this company stands to make hundreds of millions or maybe even billions of dollars in profit, they are doing so in part because they are likely to get subsidized water, subsidized electricity. Combined with competitive access to natural gas, globally competitive industrial electricity rates, robust subsea connectivity into both North and South America, and a growing natural focus on economic diversification, Trinidad possesses many of the ingredients required to support next-generation AI infrastructure. Importantly, the opportunity extends well beyond the construction of a data center. If developed successfully, Trinidad and Tobago has the potential to establish itself as an AI digital infrastructure hub serving the wider Americas, creating a platform for future investment, innovation, and long-term economic growth. So in other words, once this first set gets through, right, and your government ram it through and say, to hell with all you all can complain all you want. We don't care what the science says. We don't care what the global opposition is to this thing. $5 billion US we're talking about in the first instance, and some jobs during construction. Well, after that, we know these data centers don't really need too many workers. So, but we'll deal with that down the road. For now, we just focus on the original investment. Okay? And so once we can get these first data centers up, the world is your oyster. It means then that other people could now come and the government will say, well, we already have them here, so what the hell? Free for all. Everybody, come. You want to build data centers? Come to Trinidad. We'll find the land for you, don't worry, because we have a lot of idle land according to this government, which is why they're giving land to Landmark TT to build a house for the rich, and lands that should be used and have been reserved for the benefit of the wider citizenry, right? To treat with the construction of homes for the over 160-something thousand applications that are pending in the HEC. To hell with all here. Forget that. We are going to put the land to better use, right? Billions of dollars in US investment in data centers. And maybe whatever the negative impacts of these things are, could probably kill off a few earlier and reduce the size of the list of persons who are wanting HTC housing. Okay? But they will make it out as if it is the PNM is against development. And as we said, we are not. We're certainly not against development. We are not against foreign direct investment coming into the country, but we want proper foreign direct investment. Because when these data centers are established and so on, tell us about the foreign exchange, right? They want more details. When this government was in opposition, everything is consultation. Oh, the last administration, we want transparency. Sandals project, MOU signed. We want to know the details of the MOU. Everything we want to know. They sign MOUs, 3 MOUs. Any of these people like Zuku know what in those MOUs? No clue, but he's supporting that. But I'm sure he was among those who wanted details, granular details about the MOU that was signed for the Sandals project. Wanted details on that. But these, no, we don't need to hear about that. We trust this government completely, implicitly. Whatever they say, we go in with. And, right, until, well, they might come to build one in his backyard and he'll say, yeah, come, Ole, welcome. Come. Build it in my bedroom too. Stupid. Cheap electricity and attraction. At the heart of AI and data center investment in the country is its cheap electricity. TNTEC's electricity rates are the cheapest in the region. However, the utility is hamstrung by its billion-dollar liability to the National Gas Company for natural gas, even as the limited availability means that there's not enough natural gas to meet the needs of the downstream industries. Last Thursday, U.S. Embassy Economic Officer Jeff Sinaya identified the Point Lisas Industrial Estate as the preferred location for at least one center, with Debe also under consideration. He said TNT's electricity system already has substantial unused generating capacity. Yeah, from the smelter. Remember a company called TGU? I was supposed to provide electricity to the smelter plant, take or pay. And as a result of the idiotic decision of the People's Partnership to shut down the smelter, we were paying $42 million a month for electricity that we were not using. Remember that? I wonder if Zuko remember that. Multiply 42 million by 5 years, my friend. 12 months a year by 5 years. Do the math and see how much money in taxpayers' money went down the drain for electricity that we weren't using. He said, right, normally if you talk about building a data center somewhere, it's a 4-year project. But 2 of these years are meant to bring your electrical grid up to capacity, and it needs to supply the electricity. This is the first time I've served in a country where there is excess capacity in generating and transmission of the grid. TNT has about a quarter of its generating capacity that is not used. Sinaya had said that industrial estates such as Point Lisas provide the ideal environment for large-scale data centers because they already accommodate heavy industry and are located away from the residential communities, addressing one of the main public concerns surrounding the developments. You're basically converting methane, natural gas into knowledge, information. This is a defining moment. It's a new industrial revolution, a knowledge revolution that can be in the driver's seat as part of that, in partnership with the United States. So we know how this goes. Once up north say, make it happen, down south saying, yes, sir, no problem. You all know who down south is, right? She lives and breathes up north. Governance via Fox News. So we will continue to monitor this development, but I take note that in the recent media review, and based on what this article points to, saying that that the major AI data center is already in the works in TNT, but location is a secret. So we know that your government are a bunch of liars, members of your government. Say, no, it's just framework, nothing in concrete, but this says otherwise. Let me see if I get this here. Right. Supplementation 2026 Media Review, Ministry of Public Administration and AI. Establishment of a Tier 4 data center to strengthen digital transformation. Provision in estimate 2026. So in October last year, right? Let us take note of timelines here, which is important. In October last year, when they came in for the budget and the Ministry of Public Admin and AI asked for money, no money was allocated to the Ministry of Public Admin and AI for this Tier 4 data center. Right? Now, I noted that in this article today, they talk about how the PNM, the last administration under the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Let me read it here for you. Because I know that's what these UNC hypocrites come in with. People like David Welch and Opinion Box and Professor Misinformation, Heavy Duty. 91.1, come tomorrow with that stupidness. Here's what it says here. The Tier 4 data center project began in 2022 under the former PNM administration. In 2023, the then government through iGov-TT invited tenders for a proposed Tier 4 data center. Take note, no MOUs were signed with anybody here. The initial tender also had included a solar park capable of producing 500 kilowatts of electricity, and that the data center should, at a minimum, Tier 3 certification at that point of commissioning if the elements for Tier 4 are not available within the timeline specified. The data center, let me see what it says here. To date, the government has not made the details of that data center or its location public, and so on. But I was making the point. In budget 2026, well, last year, 2025, 2026, there was no allocation for this data center, right? But then they came last month, during the media review, $5 million was allocated to the Ministry of Public Administration and AI. So it tells you that at that point in time, when the budget was read in October last year, perhaps discussions were still ongoing. They didn't make the decision yet. So it appears that the decision would have been made sometime towards the end of the first quarter of this year, or sometime into the second quarter as they were leading up and they were doing their consultations with the ministries for fresh allocations, right? So $5 million. So provision in estimate 2026, $0.00. Supplementation in June 2026, $5 million. What is the purpose of that? To facilitate the payment of salaries to management consultants and evaluation fees to the Corporación Andina de Fomento for services provided under the sub-item establishment of a Tier 4 data center to strengthen the digital infrastructure. So your taxpayers' dollars already started. Let me go down further. Provision in 2026 estimate, $0.00. Supplementation for June 2026, $20 million. To meet the cost of expenditure incurred for civil works, rated engines and modules incurred under the sub-item construction and outfitting of a Tier 4 data center to strengthen the digital infrastructure. So Minister AI didn't ask for any money in the budget, the substantive budget of October. But sometime after that, between then, after the budget was read in October, sometime between then, and as you heard Mr. Farrell say, conversations, discussions were started sometime around a year ago, right? So sometime after the budget was read, conversations probably reached ahead and they made decisions, and now they came in June, supplementation. That's a $25 million for this Tier 4 data center. $5 million just for salaries to management consultants and evaluation fees to the Corporación Andina de Fomento for services provided under the sub-item establishment of a Tier 4 data center. Right? $25 million so far. Now, take note, we abstain from this. They voted yes. All right? So they get our money. But meanwhile, the PAN fraternity still waiting to get money to pay the banks. prize monies and so on. They tell them, well, maybe at the end of August, you'll get our money. We don't have money for that. So we have money for this, $25 million. I don't think Pancho Trinbago needed $25 million to pay these bans. Mass judges waiting for the money. We have money for that. No. Don't have money for that. CPAP and URP workers still suffering. We don't have money for that. We have money for this, $25 million. We could allocate that. NPOP's program, right? The new CPAP. 6 fortnights work. 3 fortnights paid. Workers are owed 3 fortnights. We don't have money for that. But we have money for this. We allocate $25 million to pay salaries to management consultants. What we have money for? We have money to pay Queen's Counsel to ensure that the Hadids remain incarcerated, but we don't have money to pay NPOP workers. 2,000 and something a fortnight. We don't have money for that. Well, you hold straight. Don't worry. We're trying to see what we could work out. But still get up every morning, Monday to Friday, find passage however you could, find money for lunch or however you could, to be able to get to the job site, to do the work that you have to wait to get paid for. Meanwhile, at the end of every month, the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, her salary is on time. 28, June 27th and the 29th, her salary in her account. She don't have to worry about nothing. Her salary as an MP and her salary as a minister in her account. In fact, the Prime Minister's salary as the Prime Minister and her salary as an elected MP in her account. On time. But then Pops, who not making anything close to either of those ministers, is telling all here, wait, 1 fortnight gone, whole strain. 2 fortnights, whole strain. 3 fortnights, whole strain. 4th fortnight, all right, whole 1 fortnight pay. We still owing you for 3. But at least you get something. See what you could do with that. Stretch that. You all had a pilot program from December to February of this year. December last year to February of this year. What's the purpose of a pilot program? It is so that you could see what the issues are. Work out the kinks so that when you roll out the program, you don't have these issues to deal with. You had this problem with the pilot. Then you had a 1 month for Carnival. You had the same problem. And then you come out and roll another cycle and you still have the same problem. When we asked the questions during the media review, we asked the minister what's going on with the people pay. She said, well, we had some issues because in the first cycle, December to February, it was the payroll was being managed by the ministry's payroll department, and there was a bit of a burden with the number of persons and so on. And so subsequent to that, we had to create a whole new unit specifically for dealing with salaries and so on for this program. All right. But you would appreciate that in this new cycle that was running from, I think, April to September, that we have some new people on board. And so there will be some challenges with respect to persons bringing in the information, the bank account information. Some of these people who have bank accounts and we only paying through the bank, and NIS, people are to get their NIS numbers and their for health surcharge and all these different things. You know what's going on? So yeah, we need to get all these things where people bringing it in chirrup, little bit. It causing problems. So that is the battle. We trying to tell me 6 fortnights and you still having this problem? I would think that the majority of the people by now would have brought in that information. So what's the hold up? What's the hold up? As Mr. Imbert told you all on Tuesday at the press conference, the budget for infrastructure spending was $4 billion. To date, this government has spent only $700 million on infrastructure. $700 million. They ain't got no money. But when the PNM are telling you all, we have problems, we have money. They lie, they have money, they are the thief in the money. But now the supporters, anything that come out of them, they defend them. Everything they defend them, people like Zuku and them, Umari Hines and the lot. It's $25 million allocated for this Tier 4 data center that was not allocated in the original budget. We'll see where that's going. Let's see what's the time there. I don't want to go beyond now. I don't want to go beyond 2 o'clock. But we will discuss this further next Sunday, God's willing, because I'm sure there'll be further developments this week. And who knows what else will come into our mailbox or who will whisper pusu pusu in our ears for this week, that we would have more information to be able to provide for you, right? So, of course, the other big issue taking place is this matter involving the Hadids, Dominic and Genevieve Hadid. And as I learned a couple of days ago, I think Genevieve, Mr. Hadid's wife, is a very close relative of the Minister of Transportation and Civil Aviation. As I understand, she's a Zakur by her maiden name is Zakur, as I understand, right? And very close relative to Mr. Zakur. I wonder how he feels. To see them vilifying the so-called 1%. Now, I tell you this. Anyway. But let me get this here. So, based on the developments of the last couple of days, this thing just gets curiouser and curiouser. And I'm speaking to the information that the state would have provided to the court in their efforts to prevent the Hadids from being placed under house arrest. And let me see if I get this here. Yes. So based on what we've learned for the last few days, that the government's case, or they claim that Mr. and Mrs. Hadid and their relative, Miss Sabga, this plot to kill the Prime Minister and to kill, as they say, unalive the AG and whoever else in government, rests on some two people, one called Tolgad, who happens to be the driver for the children of Mr. and Mrs. Hadid, and apparently he provides some security services as well. And another gentleman who happens to be some upstanding citizen who is involved, who is the head of some NGO that works with Mrs. Hadid, who at one point in time was the chairwoman, I believe, or the chairman of the Syrian Lebanese Women Association, and she does a lot of charity work. Right? Mrs. Hadid, as I understand, is a very young woman in her early 40s, right, and has young children who are now suffering because they are away from their parents, and their parents are unnecessarily incarcerated. They don't tell the UNC supporters that, right? Because as far as they're concerned, these people are guilty, and that's that. Well, the government, if they didn't have proof and if they didn't have evidence, then they wouldn't have locked them up. Really? If they had proof and they had evidence, they would have charged them. You don't detain people using PDOs while you investigate. That is not evidence. All they have is, according to them, information. Intelligence. It appears to be artificial intelligence, made up, contrived by somebody from somewhere. But there's a lot of things happening with this that is very confusing. Because when you read this, here's what it says. Civil Appeal number P263 of 2026. Claim number CV 2026-0261. 02618. The PDOs, and that's what the court says, right? The PDOs alleged an ongoing conspiracy to assassinate government officials, but the court considered that the stated material, which is what the state provided to support their claim that these persons are involved in an ongoing conspiracy to assassinate government officials and should be detained. Here's what it says. The court considered that the stated material did not sufficiently identify, 1, the alleged plan or conspiracy. 2, did not sufficiently identify the involvement of persons other than the detainees and the relative. So they said this grand conspiracy to unalive members of the government officials. But the state was unable to convince the court or to provide any information to sufficiently identify the involvement of persons other than the detainees and their relatives. So other than Dominic and Genevieve's aunt, Ms. Sabga, the state hasn't been able to provide any evidence to support any involvement of anybody else. In other words, they can't provide any evidence to say that Mr. and Mrs. Hadid met with anybody to plan this conspiracy, hired anybody, paid them any money to carry out the assassination, the unaliving, if we might use those things. No, can't provide any evidence. One should have evidence of that. Did not sufficiently identify any preparatory steps taken to implement the alleged plan. So in other words, they couldn't provide anything to say, well, on this day, Mr. and Mrs. Hadid met with this person or these persons, and they had a detailed discussion, and they drew up plans as to who would do what and who would bring who and who would, and how it would go and what date they would do it and how they would do it. State wasn't able to provide that either. Did not sufficiently identify how the alleged statements move beyond offensive or vehement speech into an actual conspiracy. So in other words, whatever information, whatever intelligence that the state provided in challenging the appeal by the Hadids for them to be released, the state failed to provide anything to sufficiently identify how the alleged statements, alleged meaning that these statements claiming that, okay, after the Attorney General launched his tirade or his attack on the 1% in the parliament on more than one occasion, he did it. He started in the lower house when he came and told us about this interview that this gentleman did with Anthony Bourdain, did some years ago. Right? He gave us the full transcript of what was said by Mario Sabga about giving birth to this 1% reference to the Syrian Lebanese community and so on. So we knew exactly who he was talking about. And then talking about, well, if you know it, and Tetron awaits and all. You all remember that whole talk by the AG. Letting the 1% or don't feel all above the law here, you know, well, feel all could attack me, attack my prime minister, attack members of the government, or so on, so on, so. Just know I forget the term that he used to describe the conditions down at Tetron barracks, but just to let them know. So the court is saying here, well, listen, the state failed to sufficiently identify how the alleged statements, so we don't even know if the statements were made or not. If this is a contrivance of the state, we don't know. Statements are alleged to have been made. Move beyond offensive or vehement speech into actual conspiracy. So I want to say, going on with them, boy. Who Jeremy Feely is. You know, you know, he could get unalive or so and so. This is what the court is saying. In a fit of frustration over what is being said, what appeared to be an attack on the Syrian Lebanese community, something may have been said out of frustration. And the state was unable to sufficiently identify how those alleged statements move from just somebody expressing themselves and cussing out the government and just saying something off the cuff, how it moved from that to an alleged actual conspiracy. So we see all the time people coming up on social media, on Facebook or wherever, TikTok, and cussing out the Prime Minister and cussing out this one and that one in the government and the Minister of National, well, Homeland Security, the TTPS. See it all the time, right? They are saying, the court is saying, but you haven't been able to tell us how it moved from just somebody saying something to an actual conspiracy. The court held that vague reliance on intelligence without explaining how it supported an ongoing conspiracy or developing plan arguably failed to satisfy the statutory preconditions for preventative detention. In other words, the court saying, well, where's the threat? So you hear a man say so, and you went based on that? That's it? Nothing else? You have no recordings, you don't have anything to say, well, these people actually decided that they're going. I mean, I am certain there are nobody in this government who truly believes that the Hadids were conspiring to kill anybody. Right? Even some of their own supporters are coming out and say, see, this ain't songing too right. This is an upstanding businessman who has a successful business. Right? He's an exporter, manufacturer, and he's exporting products not just in Trinidad and Tobago, because it goes beyond Blue Waters. You have other brands like Monster and all of these different things that the Juicy Juice and all of these different things, that products that they sell under that Blue Waters brand. Right? So they don't just sell in Trinidad and Tobago, they sell throughout the Caribbean, so they're making money, they're earning money, US dollars, which would allow them to be able to go and spend $100,000 abroad. Okay, Mr. AG, right? Because they have this money sitting in their bank account. The business generates foreign exchange. And if you generate foreign exchange and you have it sitting down in your account and you want to use some, As I said before, you can't go in the bank and say, give me 100,000 US, I want to go and shop. So the only other way that you can access that is if the bank extends you a line of credit, which would be covered by the money that you have sitting in your account. So you're using your money. You're not asking the bank for their money. You're not asking the bank to go out and take scarce foreign exchange and give you more than everybody else from the same pool. You are saying, my business generates foreign exchange and I have it sitting in my account and I want to have access to it. I have an alternative. I can open an account in the US or some other territory where US access to US dollars is not a problem. All right, and I can have my money there, but I choose to bring it to Trinidad and Tobago. And all I'm asking you all is that when I need access to it, I can have some sort of access to it. Not asking you all for any favors. Apparently, the Attorney General don't understand that. So one needs to question. Government will have money for a lot of things, but they have money to hire QCs. Apparently, senior counsel in Trinidad and Tobago ain't good enough anymore. We need to go to UK to hire Queen's Counsel to pay them in pounds. So it's not dollar for dollar, multiplying by 10. And money for that. To fight down a couple that up until recently were upstanding citizens. No issues, no run-ins with the law. Never had. We've seen many pictures with the Prime Minister in conversation with the same Mr. Hadid. Right? We saw in 2012, she praised this Syrian Lebanese community, telling the Trinidad and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, listen, if you all were to take pattern from them, if you were to emulate what they do, Trinidad and Tobago would be a much better, brighter, more prosperous country if you follow the lead of the Syrian Lebanese community. Which lead should we follow? But I think generally the citizens know where this is heading. What is of concern to me is that this insistence by the government that these folks engage in a conspiracy, despite the fact that their intelligence is unable to substantiate anything of the sort, just somebody say, allegedly, said something that might have constituted that, yeah. But no details of anybody meeting anybody, no details of anybody paying anybody money, and just based on some hearsay or somebody say something. These 3 persons are detained, and the state fighting tooth and nail to keep them detained until such time as either you find the evidence to charge them, in which case, once they are charged, I imagine that is a bailable offense. Because if murder, thanks to the UNC, is a bailable offense, so you could kill somebody, the police could arrest you for that crime, and you could petition the court and you could very well get bail for actually killing somebody, unaliving somebody. Since 2022, when the likes of Anna Ramlogan and Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal, Ramdayal, and others would have gone to the court and got the court to overturn murder as a non-bailable offense for some 105 years, you can now get bail for murder. But conspiracy, you are detaining these people. Why? Because the allegation is that the conspiracy was to unalive or to kill government officials. So is it that you are now saying that the lives of government officials carry significantly more weight than the average citizen? Animal Farm? That's what we're saying? Because if you could give a man bail for murder, but you want to detain a man, or a man and his wife, and a relative for conspiracy. Now the term conspiracy, con means with. So they conspired with somebody. But the people with whom they supposedly conspired, the people who were supposed to actually carry out the crime, they're still outside walking free, which is what confuses me. Because everybody involved in the conspiracy should be held under PDO. So if this conspiracy took place, if it went beyond Mr. and Mrs. Hadid and Ms. Sabga to actually engaging the persons who would have carried out the act, then why aren't those persons incarcerated? Why are those persons not detained? Why are those persons still walking free? So your intelligence didn't tell you who these people are, other than Tolgad or Tolman or whatever the heck his name is and the other gentleman? And we are seeing testimonials coming out from just ordinary citizens who know The other gentleman, who I understand is an elderly citizen, who are basically vouching for this man's character and saying, I know this man personally, he would never be involved in any such things. And Mrs. Hadid would have detailed what her interactions were based on the phone calls that the authorities are identifying or claiming is when this conspiracy was had or discussed. She was able to provide context to those telephone calls where she spoke about Tolgad or whoever it is, the gentleman who drives her children, were taking them to somewhere in Valsine, probably some party or some event in Valsine, and there were issues with the vehicle and so on. And so he was keeping her abreast of what was happening because obviously she wants to know her children are safe. And if it is they haven't arrived yet at the event, what is taking place. So she was able to provide context to that phone call without speaking to Tolgad. So obviously the police, to corroborate what she said, what I imagine would have interrogated or questioned Tolgad, and he would be able to support. Well, yeah, on that day, such and such happened. Which is why up to now, 3 weeks later, they are yet to provide one shred of evidence to say that these people actively involved in any conspiracy to kill anybody in government. Meanwhile, we're still waiting on those who were supposedly going to use a RPG, a rocket launcher, to blow up half of the Attorney General's office 1 year ago. They had intelligence there too, right? The men who they moved from the maximum security prison down to Tetron Barracks and Stobos Bay because they said they were part of a conspiracy to overthrow the government and to unalive certain members of the government. These men 1 year later still have not been charged for any such crimes. But they remain detained at Tetron and Stobos Bay, and now they are challenging their detention. Because if after a year you have not been able to provide 1 ounce of proof to say that we were involved in any conspiracy to kill anybody in government, why are we still here? Why are we still here? And the commissioner of police said, well, intelligence is not evidence. So based on where we go in, it seems that is going to be the status quo. And this situation, this scenario may very well cost you, the taxpayers, quite a bit of money. In fact, and when the Hadid first attempted to have their detention quashed, the court and refused, and the court said, well, listen, if any injury or also is incurred by the detainees, they always have the option to seek some sort of compensation from the court. In other words, you could sue the government. And these people are not going to sue for small money, because it's not just their detention they're going to sue for. The prison conditions, Mr. Hadid's health situation, because he could simply come and say that his health circumstance deteriorated while he was in prison because he was not getting the type of treatment that he was supposed to. The impact that it would have had on his company and the company's brand, especially with Caribbean Airlines indicating that they are no longer carrying the Blue Waters brand. Calls by supporters of the UNC to boycott the Blue Waters brand and all of their products. The embarrassment that has been caused to Mr. and Mrs. Hadid and their relatives, their families. So the many grounds on which they could sue. And the court is very familiar with all that is taking place. But I think that if and when that time comes, they shouldn't just stop at suing the state. They should sue the individuals, the members of government, who seem to be, what's the word I'm looking for, intent on keeping these people detained. Because the SOE is supposed to come to an end sometime around the 17th of September. Right? Which is just about 2 months from now. So when is this matter going to reach the Privy Council? And if in 2 months from now they don't have the evidence to charge these people, and even if they charge them, let them go, I assume they're going to get bail, because no crime was committed, well, no murder was committed. But it doesn't seem that the government is going to find any evidence to support this claim that these people were part of this grand conspiracy. But what confuses me is that we saw recently where the security detail of the Minister of Public Utilities has now been strengthened because of the claim that some former government minister, put out a hit on his life. We have a man who confessed who is claiming that he met with the former minister. Former minister told him that he wants him to unalive the minister, that he's willing to pay him $250,000. This is what he said, that he received $3,000 up front to show, in good faith, offer and acceptance. I give you a little something, consideration. So, hold that 3,000 as a down payment to do the work. All of these details provided since December last year, and the police only took a decision, only felt that this threat warranted increased security for Minister Paderat a couple of weeks ago. Almost 7 months after the gentleman made these claims, right? But here it is that you have a man who is claiming all these things, and that he meets with the former minister and he get money, and this conspiracy took place. All these things happen. But yet still, the former minister, no PDO has been served on him. You increase the security, the job means you believe that there is some there, that this claim by this gentleman, that there is some merit to it, that warrants having to now assign special branch officers to the minister's security detail. But you have not issued a PDO for the former minister, who is accused of doing far more than the Hadids are accused of. The Hadids have not been accused of paying anybody, meeting with anybody, offering any money, nothing of the sort, but they are detained. But this former minister, so-called former government minister, who based on this man's statement is accused of meeting with the guy, giving him the name of who he wants unalived, the amount of money he willing to pay, make a down payment. He, who is also now accused of being part of a conspiracy, no PDO for him. That making sense. Yeah, that making sense to this government. Because Paderat is a government official. The Hadids are accused of conspiring to, plotting to take the life of government officials. Same scenario. While they're waiting on to have the police question this former minister. Because based on the newspaper article, the gentleman called names. Have they questioned the former minister to hear what he has to say or she has to say about this claim that they were part of a conspiracy? What's the difference between the two? I'm confused. Now, with respect to the issue of the Hadids being, not being released, but being placed under house arrest, the Queen's Counsel, who the state has retained to represent them, their argument was, well, the issue we have with house arrest is the strain that is going to put on the resources of the TTPS to ensure that these people stay and that they abide by the terms and warranties of the house arrest, that they don't leave the house. Well, if you fit them with the ankle monitors and so on, you must know where they're going. We saw the whole Papi show last week with police, the mobile unit, and the amount of police went by the people's house to set up things to make sure, right, so that when they come, that all is in place to ensure that they remain under house arrest. To make sure they have no access to no phone because they can't talk to nobody, and this thing's so serious and we don't want them to engage with anybody, talk to anybody, have contact with anybody outside to carry out this plot. Now, if you were planning to carry out a plot, conspiracy to murder, and the police find you out, you really going to try to continue to do that? Really? If this isn't overkill, I don't know what is. But the Queen's Counsels were able to convince the court that no, it would be a strain on the TTPS if it is that you were to place these people under house arrest, because the already strained resources. You have to provide manpower, officers by these people's homes round the clock. And they live right on the water, because I guess wherever their house is, they probably have a boat because the water right outside the house. So that poses a threat as well, because who could really? But providing special branch officers for Minister Paderat doesn't put a strain on the TTPS resources. Providing special branch officers and security detail for the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Khadija Amin, claim, threats because they shut down CPEP and URP and so on. That hasn't put a strain on the TTPS resources. No, it hasn't done that, right? No. So we can't spare a few officers to go by the Hadid's house, park one car outside the gate. We see police cars park up outside by NP on the highway there all the time. Cars zooming by going 150 plus kilometers per hour. The police, nothing happen. You see them park up by the gas station and by Beetham there on the highway all the time. Sometimes on the highway, at Trin City there, see them park up there. Cars zooming past, wishing. People breaking the light and nothing, the officer, nothing, unlike what you would see in the United States. If the speed limit is 65 and you have one of these Broward County sheriff officers pulled up on the side and you're going 75, 80, next thing you just see flashing blue lights and they speed out on the highway, pull aside. You don't see that in Trinidad there. Nothing to happen. Unless they have a speed trap. Okay, but otherwise to that. So we can afford to find special branch officers to beef up Pararat security detail. You all got this information since December last year. Subsequent to that, earlier on this year, we would have seen that notwithstanding the claims by Para, because you already had security since the shutdown of CPEP, which falls under his ministry, death threats and so on. But yet still we saw a video earlier this year with the man going to some fast food, I think it was KFC or something like that, going, driving himself, going inside KFC, he order his thing and he come outside, jump in the van and gone. We see him in parties, winding down the place, pong the damadol, pong it, pong it, pong the damadol. Yeah, you see him wind back and if you see him going on. No concern. Whole set of people inside there, you don't know who is who. So I'm pretty sure that when these folks came to these parties or whatever it is that he's going to, they're screening them and so on. No concern. And this is after this gentleman made this claim. All of a sudden, we believe that there is some merit to this threat. We didn't believe it in January, February, March, April, May, June, or July. Yeah. Until I remember the man said that in December, what we do about that? Nothing. Give my extra 2-3 officers now. Maybe party fine, but how come Khadija have two escort vehicles and I only have one? I need 2 more. Right? It's not fair. I need 2 more to match Khadija. How many ministers under this government have security detail? But we created new ministries. So Wayne Sturge has security detail. The Attorney General has security detail. The Prime Minister has security detail. The Minister of Public Utilities has security detail. The Minister of Rural Development and Local Government has security detail. I'm not too sure if the Minister of Energy has a security detail. Somebody reached out to me and said that he does. I'm not too certain. But certainly more ministers under this government have security detail than the last one. So all these extra ministers, that doesn't put strain on the TTPS? No? I'm confused. But coming back to the issue of the Hadid, well, it's the same issue. If there is this grand conspiracy to unalive the Prime Minister, the AG, and whoever else, how exactly were you going to do that? Because these 2 individuals have very strong security details. How exactly are you going to, in what setting would you be able to do that? How do you get to the Prime Minister when she always has this big security around her? How? How you get to the Attorney General? So you had to work out all of these set of logistics for what? Because the Attorney General come in the Parliament and decide that you want to talk rubbish and talk nonsense. I mean, it makes no sense. It is not practical. But who knows? I don't know what the timeline is going to be for the Privy Council. But as I said, this SOE is supposed to come to an end around the middle of September. After that, the only option the government has is either to come to the Parliament to seek a 6-month extension, which requires at least 31, the support of at least 31 persons in the House. They do not have 31, and they sure as hell not going to get any support from us. That we can assure you. So that dead in the water. So they don't even come to Parliament with that nonsense. So the only other alternative is to do what they did last time, bring this SOE to an end for about a month or so, and then come back with the next one. But in the intervening period, if they have no evidence to charge Mr. and Mrs. Hadid, they would have to release them as they did the last time. Everybody who they had charged, well, not charged, who they had detained under PDOs, they had to let them go. So you wait a month and then go back and detain them again for another 3 months. But we wait to see. And this is why we did not support Zoso, and we will not support Zoso. Because whereas the SOE has a shelf life, 3 months, and then they have to come for 6, and they will not get the support from us for 6. So they could only at any point in time do 2-3 months and then take a break and then come back again. But with Zoso, there is no shelf life. It's just an ongoing thing. So we see the threat now to democracy and why it was a good thing that we did not support Zoso. And the consensus outside is that this is a dictatorial government. Imagine we in the PNM attempted to get, from what I am told, well, some member of the PNM attempted to get some legal advice from senior counsel in respect of a parliamentary matter. And the senior counsel saying here, what? Thanks, but no thanks. No. Okay, see what's going on here? We don't want to get blacklisted. We don't want to be discriminated against. All right? These are people who some people might consider to be PNM attorneys. These are people who benefited from briefs under the last administration. Today, they're afraid to talk to us, afraid to provide legal advice to the PNM because they're concerned of what this wicked and vindictive government will do to them and the impact that they can have on their careers, that they could be blacklisted and they can get no more brief from the state and so on. And they could, that people who are affiliated with this government and who might be clients might decide, well, oh, so you're against the government? Well, all right, well, we're looking for a different attorney. This is where we have reached in this country. People are afraid to speak out. Voices that in the past were very critical of the PNM, who the UNC said was oppressive and dictatorial and wicked and vindictive, all of a sudden they gone quiet. Not seeing them writing to the newspaper anymore, no letters to the editor, not proffering any opinions, not making themselves available to the media for comment on anything because they're afraid. Afraid. If you say the wrong thing, next thing, PDO. You're detained. But you all said people like Zuku and Omari Hines and the rest of them, Rowley is a dictator, the PNM is a dictatorship. They want to turn Trinidad and Tobago into a communist state. All that dotish talk. All that chupid talk for 10 years. But look at what has been prevailing for the last 15 months. And they have a defense for all of that. Plaster for every so. Everything. Now this government does. Oh yes, well, I know it's necessary. $3.4 billion. $3.4 billion withdrawn from the HSF. When the PNM withdrew, look at them, they're raiding the HSF. They're raiding the HSF. But $3.4 billion, $500 million US dollars withdrawn last year. Nobody knew about it. Right? Nobody knew about it. When the PNM made withdrawals, oh yes, everybody know. But this government took out all that money. Nobody knew anything. We have no idea what was done with it, what it was spent on. And the UNC hypocrites who always we want transparency from the PNM. We want to know every detail of how every dollar and every cent spent. They're not interested. Not interested in where that 500 million went, what it was taken out for. UNC not reading, because the PNM leave the country in debt. They leave no money. Really? But it had sufficient money last year for Taxco to come and allocate in the media review to pay them back pay, for he and his colleagues to get the back pay from the pay raise that they say they didn't want. That was greedy on the part of the PNM. First thing, in June last year, back pay. Couldn't wait. And this back pay wasn't paid in 60-40, 60% non-cash and 40 cash. No. 100% cash. They won the election at the end of April, came into office the 1st of May, and by the middle of June, come to allocate money for their back pay. They want it. They don't want the money sleep out. But no such sentiments for the public servants. So in 60-40, take it or leave it. Yeah, the PNM left the country in debt. Not so? All the debts that the UNC inherited from the PNM. What about the debts that the PNM inherited from the UNC when they came in 2015? A $6 billion back pay debt from Kamla's offer of 14% to public servants. Imbut had to go and find that $6 billion to pay 100% cash. He didn't tell earlier 60-40. He didn't say 70-30. He didn't say 50-50. No, he gave you all 100% cash. Had to go begging cap in hand. The first month came in September, right? He was minister for just 2 or 3 weeks. When it is that the central bank governor then told him, here, what I'm going to turn off the tap, no more money for you. And he went to the energy companies begging cap in hand, please, sir, can I have some money? I know you had to pay your taxes by the end of the quarter. You have until the 15th of October. But you could give me a little advance because I need to pay salaries and pension and public assistance and all of these different grants for the month of September. You could pay in advance instead of waiting until the deadline. You could pay early. And they say, boy, what you talking about? What tax you talking about? They have nothing, no tax to pay. You didn't hear about the sweetheart concessions the last administration gave us. But no tax for you until 2027. Rocks over that, but it's a joker. Go from here with that. He had to go and borrow the money to pay you all 100%. Your back pay, your $6 billion, 100% cash. Tax queen willing to do that. But he borrowed 800 million US at 6.20% coupon rate. 1 billion US at 6.5% coupon rate. Imbut borrowed the same $1 billion at 4.5%, 2% less than what Taxco borrowed it at. And the hypocrites, the sycophants in the UNC clapping like circus seal. Oh, look at that. It was oversubscribed by 2.5 times. But when it is that Imbut raised the same bond, oversubscribed by 5.5 and 6 times. Yeah? Big difference. And the idiocy of the supporters of that party. Well, you know the interest rate had to go up because the interest rate goes up with time. Over time, it must go up. What utter rubbish are you talking about? The interest rates as it pertains to bonds is tied to the creditworthiness of the issuer. Because the government of Norway could go and raise that same $1 billion bond and they could offer 3%. And it would be oversubscribed by a lot more than what our bond was oversubscribed by. You know why? Because the persons who would be inclined to invest in that bond or to purchase that bond know that the government of Norway have money coming out the wazoo. They have a heritage and stabilization fund. It's not called a heritage and stabilization fund. It's called a sovereign wealth fund that has 1.7 trillion US dollars in it. 1.7 trillion US. Ours just has 6 billion US. Far, far less. And therefore, when your credit worthiness is not that great, that is why you pay higher interest rates. So you know the people who can't go to the bank because their credit rating poor, they have a habit of not paying back the loans. So therefore, they had to go buy finance houses like Island Finance and pay big rates. Bigger interest rates, higher interest rates because your credit poor, it's bad. So when I read comments from the supporters of the UNC talking nonsense and challenging me, well, we're not down. It must be, the interest rate must be high, it must be higher. It's 10 years later. Oh, I don't know what you're all talking about. Just hush. Hush. Has nothing to do with time. Has everything to do with the credit worthiness. And if it is that international borrowers, when they do their research and they realize, the government of Trinidad and Tobago running a budget deficit, there's a projected budget deficit of 5 billion, 6 billion. Well, the Tanku said 3.7, but you're really unsure what the figure is. When we look at the credit ratings of Moody's and S&P and so on, and we see downgrades in terms of ratings and so on, we are concerned about the ability of this government to repay this bond. So if you really want me to purchase this bond, you need to pay me a higher interest rate so that the coupon that I receive in the earlier years, right, would at least cover much of my principal in the earlier years. So if later on, closer to the time that the bond is supposed to mature, you can't afford to pay me back, at least I would have gotten back the majority of my money in the form of interest, so I don't really lose much. So go and do a little research and understand. Instead of you all coming to talk rubbish. As they say, it's better to keep quiet and let people think you're an idiot than to speak and remove all doubt. But that's what we're dealing with. So all the loud voices that used to question everything the PNM did, where are they now? We're in a worse off situation. People are afraid to talk. Even their own supporters concerned. But today or tomorrow election call, bet your bottom dollar them same hypocrites and them running to the polls to vote back these people. Let me see. Precious 1929 said they done if the economy was good, we would get better interest rate. Exactly. If the borrowers, if the purchasers of these bonds were inclined, not borrowers, well, because we borrowing, but if those who are inclined to purchase this bond had more confidence in Trinidad and Tobago's economy, because when they look in, they see where is this government getting the majority of its money from? Okay, oil and gas. But we're seeing that gas production is on the decline. We're looking at oil production moving up just a little, but not much. We're looking at what this country's sovereign debt is, what their debt to GDP ratio is. It ain't looking all that great. And we see they continue to borrow and borrow. They just raised the bond for $1 billion and now they're coming back for another 800 million. What does that say? It says that the government is not generating sufficient revenue to deal with its business and has to keep borrowing and borrowing so to do. So all of these are things which people would look at to say, well, let me see, Trinidad and Tobago government is offering a bond. The government of Canada is offering a bond. Let's see, the government of Norway is offering a bond. All right, let's see which of these three governments has the better ability to pay back. Trinidad looking too good, I know. But I'm just using hypotheticals here. But the Canadian bond is, the coupon on that is 3.5%. Norway bond is 3%. Trinidad and Tobago is 6.2. 6.5. That's good interest. I would take a chance there, yes? Take a chance. That's what it is. Let me see here. Let me see. What's the time there? Right. Let me see. Now, I wanted to touch, but I don't have the time this week, but I will touch on that next week. In respect of the government's pursuit of Balize House. And I suppose that is what Mr. Zuku was referring to in his first comment. Right? But we are not afraid. We have nothing to hide. At least we have a headquarters. Same cannot be said for your government. First year Prime Minister said, well, Balize House was built with drug money. Now we'll come and say, well, no, it's not drugs money. It's kickback money. It's corruption money. Yeah. They was given contracts to certain people, and these people come and build Balize House. That's all. Listen, make up your mind. Pick a struggle. Is it drug money? Is it kickback money? Which one it is? Same way you all couldn't decide on the cost. It started off as 50 million, then 100 million, 150 million, 200 million, 250 million, 300 million. All of a sudden, everybody in the UNC is quantity surveyors. They could just drive past Balize House. Yeah, that looked like that 300 million there. Really? But then you have a building. When we compare the companion building at Balize House to the Ministry of Health building. Chalk and cheese. And we compare the cost. Yeah, but they want to tell you that little companion building cost 300 million, 250 million. Yeah, that's UNC for you. Right? Let's see this here. Good afternoon to His Excellency, the President of Pleasantville, Nigel O'Connor. Yes, sir, I touched on it earlier, but I will treat with it in a little more detail next weekend because I know World Cup final starting just now. Right? So the police decided they wanted to serve Foster Cummins in the airport. Well, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. I wasn't aware that's around the time I was in the airport too. But yeah. But what is interesting is that they are coming after the PNM using the civil asset forfeiture legislation, right? Which is legislation that the PNM piloted. And you all may recall that when the PNM piloted that legislation, the UNC, who in government today, vehemently opposed that legislation on the basis that they said the PNM would use it to come after UNC politicians and supporters of the UNC and financiers of the UNC. That's what they said. They didn't want to support based on that alone. And then when the public start to watch them side eye and say, well, if all you're not to hide, then why wouldn't you support this legislation? If you have no cocoa in the sun and the PNM comes after you, then there's no there's nothing to be had because your hands are clean. And then they realize, okay, this putting us under the spotlight. You know what? They came with 67 inconsequential amendments, most of which was to change may to shall, take out a semicolon and put a comma, put a full stop here, stupidness like that. And they got through with about 7 out of the 67. And I say, yes, now the legislation is good. Eureka! We could support this. What have they now come to do? Use the very same legislation that they claim the PNM was putting in place to come after them. They decided they're going to use that legislation to come after the PNM. If that isn't the height of hypocrisy, I don't know what is. They accuse everything. FATCA, the PNM, no, we can't support that because the PNM will use the reciprocity clause to come after the UNC politicians and UNC financiers and UNC supporters. Never happened. Explain your wealth, same thing. PNM will use that to come after UNC, so we can't support it. But today, they now coming to use the same legislation that they didn't support, that they were opposed to say they're coming after the PNM, to claim allegations of corruption. Because after a whole year and some later, right, almost a year and a half later, they have not been able to come with any substantial allegation against any minister to say any minister thief money. And by this time, in 2015, the PNM had already identified several ministers, right, who engaged in wrongdoing under the previous administration. By this time, 2016, the PNM had already uncovered the EFCL, the contract mill at the EFCL office somewhere in Maraval, where they found the back room with the 3 fellows who were backdating contracts that were issued by EFCL for school construction of schools and so on. And the government had already paid for that. And then they now backdating the contract so these people could come and say, well, look, I have my contract here. We did the work and we haven't been paid. Remember that? That was discovered. PNM had discovered all of these things by now. But 15 months later, the only thing they could come and tell is they had corruption in CPEP and corruption in UAP. What was the corruption in CPEP? Because Paris decided to extend the contracts by a further 3 years to ensure that the laborers, 11,000 laborers who are now unemployed, the majority of them, after 1 year still without work, that they would still be employed for a period of time. It had nothing to do with the 331 contractors, some of who were UNC supporters. It was to protect. There's already PNM don't do nothing for their own and all of that, to protect these workers. And as I mentioned in the press conference on Thursday, that I now have people calling me, right, former CPEP workers who are struggling. They have children to send to school. School is on vacation. They can't send the children to a camp. The children normally, when they're in school, at least they would get meals, they would get breakfast and lunch. Now that they're home, no school feeding program. So the parents have no money to buy anything, no breakfast, no lunch. If they get breakfast, forget lunch. They might be able to get something for dinner, but that's about it. They are at their wits' end. Every week they call in the office, anything, any employment, you get any food card, you have any hampers, any vouchers, anything. I'm nothing in my house to cook, and the children home and stuff they're starving. I just get one day, a little one day here and a one day here, but that's what they're saying. To the point now where people are contemplating taking their own lives because they're fed up. Mental health is real. And this government is taking a toll on people's mental health. I told you all about the couple, the gentleman who was working in the Ministry of Social Development and his wife who was working in the LSA. Right? These are career public servants, people in their mid to late 50s, not in their 30s and 40s to say, well, okay, they could get a job somewhere else. They have a mortgage to pay, they have other bills to pay, loans and so on, car loans and all these different things. Contract came to an end. But it didn't come to an end. Contracts, government decided, well, here what? Cutting your contract, you cutting yours, not individually. Several persons from where they were working lost their jobs. Right? And now these people are their wits' end. So the husband has to go and find a job. He got a little end in a grocery. Right? You could imagine that. You were holding a substantive position in a substantial position in the Ministry of Youth Development, not Youth Development, sorry, the people and social development. For years. I recall when I was campaigning and I met the gentleman and he said, well, look, I'm with the ministry in this department and so on. So if it is that you have persons who have outstanding applications for certain grants, you could reach out to me, send me the list, and I will see how I could assist to fast track it to be able to assist these persons. Because we know that there's a backlog. Right? He told me that, and I would have sent names to him and gotten assistance for people. Lost his work. Right? So he has to take a menial job now to try and make ends meet, at least be able to buy food and pay 1 or 2 bills. His wife is without work. Daughter was working Wasa. She lost her job too. Right? Looking for work. And then talk about corruption and corruption. Going to create 55,000 jobs. They had this big announcement in October last year. Oh yes, employment drive. We have 20,000 plus vacancies in the ministry, in the public service. Send in your application. 110,000 applications they got. How many of those vacancies have been filled? How many? But the only thing they're boasting about is NPOPs. Cutting grass. You're just getting a little more money now than you were getting under CPEP to do the same work. But the Prime Minister say everybody cutting grass, CPEP cutting grass, URP cutting grass, forestry cutting grass, the corporation cutting grass, everybody cutting grass. And what they do, they send you same right back to do the same thing. Except now you're cutting grass and they clean and drain and so on. You get a little more money. But you're working for your money and you're still not getting it on time. 2 and 3 fortnights in arrears. So that when it is people calling me and big man shedding tears on the phone, fed up. You don't know how much more he could take. Right now, he feel he could just take his life. What are you supposed to do? And then I see, when I mentioned that in the press conference, these idiots in the UNC decide to take a clip of that statement and they create a post and talking nonsense about, look, PNM encouraging, and that's what they want for their people. $400 a week in CPEP and some nonsense or some shoppiness, so and only want to promote gimme. Well, $400 a week, if that is it, is still better than $0 a week. To the UNC idiots, you hypocrites. 400 a week is better than, and at least they were getting their money on time. There was never a fortnight that was in arrears, as is the case now. So they could at least buy something, pay a bill or two, put food on the table instead of every week having to call the MP's office to ask for help. And in the comments, they have the audacity to talk about, well, why you don't help them? And you are the MP, that's your work, that's what you're supposed to do. Really? But when 20 people come into me every week with the same problem, and everybody looking for help, there's only so much as an MP I could do. Right? I can't make money out of thin air. And the parliament doesn't give us money to be able to give these people. But I tell you, send them to the Ministry of Social Development. When they fired all these people from CPEP, that's what Khadija said. Yes, we have support mechanisms in place through the Ministry of Social Development. And when the people go to the Ministry of Social Development, the amount of things that they want them to bring. And I will need to tell them, well, they don't qualify. Because yes, you're a former CPEP worker, but you're living in a house where, based on the household income, other people in the house making money. So their money apparently is your money. And that's the struggles that people face. But better days ahead have now turned to better days are here. And how much better is it? How much better is it? Is your life better? Because I can tell you the people in my constituency catching their royal for simple things like water. I can read out all the WhatsApp comments that I have. Not comments, but messages I've received from people in Darwell Gardens, from people in Reed Lane, from people in other parts of Mausika and Dabadi who are complaining that they've not had water in 2 weeks. Unprecedented. People in Karapo, people in parts of Malabar have not gotten water. And they're only harassing the Wasserman. You could send a truck supply here, you could send a truck supply here, you could open the line here, and these get them a few hours now. They complaining the pressure is not good enough and water not reaching the tank. What you could do for me? Whole time, every minute, that's me, trying to help these people. But we see in UNC constituencies, they're doing plenty. PNM constituencies, and then have the audacity to talk about, well, the PNM neglecting the constituencies. Rubbish. Utter garbage. Anyway. Let's see what they're saying here. Right? Slimy Show is saying if the government refuses to help, then we help ourselves. I would love to do that, Slimy, but it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. Gertrude Macano is saying, Romain boy, if you see Palo Seco, the pavement, you can't even walk on it, only grass. They forget we down here and Elder just don't care. Precious is saying they promised 10% to public servants and now they have to give time off. Because they have no money. Tanku and them just hoping and praying that this gas money come through and then, yeah, they go Lego thing. That's why he said in the parliament the other day, come next year, the end of next year is when they expect any money to start to roll in. So in other words, hold strain until then now. Hold strain until then. But I see they finally start back construction on the building that is supposed to house the Ministry of Social Development that the PNM started. I don't know if probably, because I know they listen here, they probably hear me talk about it and decide, well, hey, let's deal with that instead of continuing to put money in Faris' pocket. So that's what, so kudos to them. But when we had our retreat 2 weekends ago, them Marcos and them was talking about that too in Kipok. And we were on the, I think it was the 3rd floor or so. And you're looking down, that plot of land behind the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they were supposed to construct the head office of the EBC. Right? And you're seeing where construction had started because it's blocked around. But from upstairs in Kipok, you could see significant work had already taken place on the site. Monies were spent. The construction process had begun. This government decided, well, we're stopping it. But the hypocritical supporters who want to criticize the PNM when they come in 2015 and they stopped this project and they didn't open the Cuba hospital and they didn't do that and how much schools and they didn't complete the schools. Why you all come and talk about that now? Talk about that. Wanting to take credit for the central block in Port of Spain. The PNM do that. They're going to hand over the new airport terminal in Tobago to PNM did that. One should look. Folks, we will chat next week. All right, as I said, it is now 2:25, and I know many of you are gearing up to go and look at your World Cup final, whoever it is you're supporting. My team gone home a long time, so neither here nor there with me. All right. Leno Ez is saying it's time they have started back the youth programs. I agree with you. They should never have stopped it in the first place. But you know what they have? If you're in Tunapuna, Zanda, offering you could become a hairdresser. They're offering a hairdressing course, and to the young men, they're offering a barbering course. All right, so you can learn how to deal with how to do hair. So we stopped the program teaching you how to use a crane. We stopped the program teaching you how to become a plumber, how to become a linesman with TNTech and so on. All these programs, you know, how to do air conditioning and refrigeration and so on. We stopped the program where you would have learned agriculture. You would have gone to UE for 2 years to get your certification in agriculture. And when you finish, you would have gotten 2 plots of land or 2 acres of land, $20,000, your starter home. We stop all of that. And what we offering you now, come and become a hairdresser or a barber. Not that anything is wrong with that, because my barber makes money off of me every week. But yeah, that's all we offering you now. All the other things, that's on hold. 15 months now. One of the young men who was killed yesterday in Laventille by the gas station was a graduate of I understand, of the MILAT program. His mother said she sent him there because she wanted to avoid the very thing that happened to him yesterday, of him being killed. He went there, he came out with 5 CSEC passes, right? And he just enlisted to join up with the defense force, the army, right? Today he's dead. Today he's on a slab, in a drawer in Forensic Science Center, waiting for an autopsy tomorrow morning. When his mother tried to save him from that very life. His father worked hard to save him from that very life. Today, that program is shut down. How many more of those young men will we see finding themselves in similar circumstances? Because this government don't have money, too expensive. It's more expensive to train a cadet than it is to send to educate a person, a student at the university. But you all have money to spend to hire Queen's Counsel to go after the Hadids. That's what is priority to them. You have $25 million to spend on AI data center. That's what is priority for them. And then want to talk about PNM and PNM and PNM. Hypocrites. Slimy Show says if one person cuts grass for his community, the community should do something for that person. Could agree. I mean, the mayor of San Fernando is doing that right now. If you go on Robert Paris, if you go on his Facebook page, you will see that he would have found a way to get some of the former CPAP workers into groups or so on, and they're doing work, and I think they get in some sort of compensation for it. I, in fact, have paid former CPAP workers to cut the grass around the Larry Gomes Stadium. Persons who walk around there in the afternoon have complained to my office that the grass is very high and it's impacting them, their safety when they walk in, especially those who work early in the morning, 5 o'clock and so on. And I would have gotten a couple of the former CPAP workers from my area, call one of the contractors who still has the equipment and ask them, cut the grass for me and I will pay them from my resources. So they get a little and they were grateful for it. So Shirley Henry is saying they said that the data center started under the PNM. So it's important to make the differentiation between data centers and AI data centers, right? And based on what I would have read in the article, that too would have been one of the projects that this government would have put on hold. And it seems now, as I said, there was no allocation in the budget last year in October. But for the media review, some $25 million was allocated, which means that it's under a new dispensation. And so we wait to see. But some of these journalists really can't take them at face value, because they deliberately throw things like that inside there to support. But the fact that nobody from this government has come out to say, well, it started under the PNM, because if that was the case and it was the same project, somebody would have said that, the Prime Minister would have said that already, or Smith would have said that. So the fact that none of them have said that in the face of all of this operation tells me that this is something absolutely different. Because the fact that no reference was made in this article to what I spoke about, the $25 million that was allocated for this Tier 4 data center in the media review, tells me that they don't know what they're talking about. So, and also pointing to the fact where Mr. Farrell, who is one of the principals for Hummingbird AI, which is one of the companies with whom the government signed an MOU that has a big question mark, saying that that company was incorporated specifically for this project in Trinidad, speaks volumes. And I imagine we'll be hearing a lot more about that in the days to come. All right, but don't worry. We are on top of this thing. As the signatures continue to grow and the government continues to push, as I said on Thursday, this is clearly a done deal. The discussions were already had, decisions have been made, and now going forward, any consultation that the government comes with is merely a farce, because it is clear they see $5 billion, that's the figure we're hearing, US dollars investment, and they just want to be able to boast that they brought in how many billions of dollars in foreign direct investment. That's what it's about. And Kamala knows that by the time these data centers are constructed, because the timeline in the article speaks about 4 years, she most likely would not be in government. Whether it is that her party is out of government or she has demitted office. So she just want to be able to boast and say. But that's about it. Sandra says they have money to renovate Ambassador Home in Washington, exactly. 13 million TT dollars, but shut down the program to help the youths. Let's see here. Let's see. Precious is saying UNC shut down every program that the PNM introduced. Exactly. Jimmy is saying plenty African youth voted for this government in the last election, and many of them regret it. Slimy says, I sent you all these links on WhatsApp. All right, I will check it. I will check it out, Slimy. Omari Hines says the Youth and Agriculture Homestead program was just for PNM to vote apart in South. Really? The PNM wanted to vote apart in Chatham? Seriously, Omari? The PNM was holding the majority of the southern seats, Labre and Point Fortin, which were considered to be PNM safe seats. They were holding San Fernando East and San Fernando West. So where exactly did they want to vote apart, Omari? The PNM knows they could never get Oropouche East or Oropouche West. We know we could never get Saparia. So it have no amount of vote aparting they could do. Because when you look at the comparative in terms of how many votes Kamala gets 16,000 plus in Siparia, and if the PNM get 3,000, 4,000 votes in Siparia, we're lucky. You know what voter padding you would have to do to be able to overcome 16,000 versus 4? That making any sense to you? When you look at the amount of votes Munilal gets, again, 16,000, 17,000 votes as opposed to the PNM 1,700 or 2,000 if we're lucky. You know what voter padding? How the hell you could use that program to voter pad in South? Where in South? Faizabad? Listen, the PNM is not delusional to believe that we could get over UNC sycophancy to the point where we could win one of these seats, you know. We know that. All right? So we put up candidates in all of these seats because we understand that the PNM has support in every one of these constituencies, and is to provide an opportunity for our supporters there to have a candidate to vote for. Unlike the UNC, you say, well, it doesn't make no sense we send up a candidates in Tobago because we know we have no support there. The PNM is the only true national party that will send up representation for 41 seats, even in the seats where we know we don't have a chance. Right? So this idea about voter padding and all that nonsense. You just need 21 seats to get into government. And we know UNC sycophants, Kamala could do what she wants to them. The same way she abandoned them in 2015 and left them in tears in Rienzi complex and didn't even bother to go and console them to give a speech, a concession speech. She jumped in a car and went home. No PNM political leader has ever done that. Win, lose, or draw, they go to Balize House and they speak to the supporters and let them know so is the case. But Kamala did that to them in 2015 and they remain faithful. But they run Mr. Manning like a dog out of Balize House in 2010. Go for me, and whatever it is. Kamala ever get that? No. That's the fundamental difference between PNM and UNC. UNC sycophancy goes to a whole different level. When PNM people vex with PNM, what happened on April 28th is what happens. They wouldn't hold their nose to vote for the UNC. They will simply not go to the polls at all and punish the PNM, right? And give office, by virtue of not voting, they give office to the UNC. And then for 5 years, I could say we know, but for 5 years, the PNM opposition now taking like, so they ain't doing enough, and they're supposed to do more and everything. And we should never have been there in the first place because we told you all this was going to happen. We told you all. Imagine I bounced up a pastor in the grocery a couple of days ago and he said, oh God, MP Romain, what's going on? This is the worst I've ever seen it. And this man is almost 70 years old. He said, I don't know what's going on in this country. I have to be on my knees every day praying for this country. I'm praying for all, you know, but I don't know what this is a different dispensation, never before seen. And he isn't the only person saying that. Many people are saying that. But then they're paying these clowns money that they don't have. For cadets, they could pay people to talk rubbish on 91.1. Imagine yesterday, the one who was by the name Opinion Box. I mean, all right, I wouldn't go there. But he is one of the staunchest defenders of the UNC, right? Attacking the PNM at every turn. He's so bright. He have all the answers to everything. He always have to come and analyze everything. And when you read the comments from the UNC supporters, yes, man, educate them. You know what you're talking about. You couldn't explain it better. He's the best thing since sliced bread for them. But yesterday he put up a post, right? A picture with him, his two sons, an East Indian gentleman and his son. And the caption reads, "It was a privilege for my sons and I to meet the mayor of Arima and his son." There was at some boxcar event. And, he's hoping that his son would continue to make his father proud and in the future and all kind of thing. And I'm reading the and I'm saying, but who in this picture is the mayor of Arima? Because I know Bali, and that man ain't Bali. And I know Bali is 85 years old, so Bali don't have a young son. So I read the caption again, a third time, and then I go in the comments and I'm reading, and people saying, but that's not the mayor of Arima. They changed the mayor of Arima because that ain't him. So the clown doesn't even know who the mayor of Arima is. You take a picture with a man and his son and come and put up a caption saying it was a privilege for you to meet the mayor of Arima. Who tell you that was the mayor of Arima? Well, I guess when he read the comments and realized that he's an idiot, he changed the caption. He took off the top part where he said it was a pleasure for him and his sons to meet the mayor of Arima and his son. And just left the bottom part and deleted all the comments where people were asking, well, who in that picture is the mayor? That's not the mayor. But this is who this government taking your taxpayers' money to pay to talk to you on 91.1 every day for 2 and 3 hours to tell you what to believe, pushing government propaganda and has no clue who the mayor of Arima is. But that's who they pay. Meanwhile, anyway, Slimy saying, I really wish you could give an in-depth class on AI. I think I'll take you up on that challenge, Slimy. Slimy says that all those data centers being built are a scam. Listen, from where I sit, from what I see, is that this administration is desperate, right? And as I said, people are seeing opportunity. That because I would tell you this, MP Imbut, you don't like me to call him MP Imbut, Colm, was telling us, he said when the PNM was in office, you had a number of these AI persons, right? And these company executives who constructing these AI data centers came to the last administration looking to do exactly what this government is pushing. And based on the research and the information that was available to the last administration, they told them, no, we're not interested. He said they were coming with all the amount of proposals that they got, unsolicited proposals, and people coming to invest all kind of money into these AI data centers. And they told them, no, we're not interested because of the environmental issues and so on, the impact that it would have on water. We knew that they were coming here to take advantage of our low electricity rates and low water rates and so on. And the government told them, no, they're not interested. And the same thing happened in 2010 with the MV Panorama. Remember the Panorama? When they came to Mr. Manning in March of 2010 to purchase the Panorama and offer 300,000 US or something like that, and Mr. Manning said thanks, but no thanks. And then when the PNM was voted out of office, the same people came back in August of 2010 and made the offer to the UNC, and they took it and they sold the Panorama. Here they are again. After being rejected, these companies are now coming back and they're finding a government that is more amenable to that because they couldn't care. They just studying money and who knows whatever kickback they get in. And they're just going to run it through. And you have a prime minister who is very pliable. She wants to be able to boast to say foreign direct investment and create jobs because she knows her government does not have the capacity to hire the amount of people that they claim they were going to hire. That's why they came up with this national revitalization program that came out of nowhere. That's what they're depending on, foreign direct investment, private sector, because the government cannot sustain, they cannot keep, they're firing people, bringing contracts to a premature end, people whose contracts were just renewed under the last administration for 3 years, and they've only served 1 year and finding that their contracts have not come to an end because the department they work in has not been made redundant. And all of these different things are happening, right? So these same people who were coming to the last administration with the offers and they were rejected have now found favor with this current administration, and they have found favor with a minister whose background is in AI, and that's what he's pushing. And so, again, I ask the question, does the minister have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of any of these current AI companies or any others that are to come? Because while we've seen 3 MOUs signed, Lord only knows how many more are on the horizon. How many other entities they are now in discussions with to come and set up more AI data centers. Because the US embassy, as I read just now, identified the Point Lisa's industrial complex. But we heard Pararat say, DB, we've heard talk about the E-Tech Park. So this is just the beginning. And once they get over this first hurdle, there is no telling how many more they're going to come with, because they will see, well, like Trinidad and Tobago government, easy. We just had to come with the right offer, talk to the right people, and you get through. And the mere fact that this Hummingbird AI was created specifically for this project in Trinidad and Tobago should be of concern to you all. Because as I said before, no man is going to spend no money and engage in all of this lengthy process to incorporate a company in the US to come and set up shop here, unless it is they've been given certain assurances by the authorities that they get through. Right? So it seems to be a done deal. So it is what it is. And David McIntyre is saying, and the 1% who even seem interested in their revitalization project. Exactly. Well, if they weren't interested before, you see what's happening with the Hadiths, they sure as hell ain't interested now. Super C is saying, imagine another methanol plant closed down, so no Atlas, no Titan, plus Nutrien, which produces ammonia and urea. Good Lord. Yeah, because it seems NGC, under the leadership of Gerald Ramdi, they're not interested in ammonia and urea anymore. They're just interested in, we get the gas and we sell the natural gas and we make money, transfer pricing and so on, and we gain better rates in Asia based on what Keith Rowley and Stuart Chung would have done, and the restructuring and so on, and the pricing and all that. Yeah. And this government has again come with the same thing they did in 2010. Don't forget, all of these sweetheart concessions that they would have provided to these energy companies, where they could come and drill for oil and drill for gas, and if it is they don't get anything, or even if they do get anything, they are allowed to write off whatever money they would have spent in that drilling process against their tax liabilities. And as long as, and they give them the opportunity to carry forward as well. So as long as you spend your money, we give you the opportunity to get back all that you spent in tax concessions, and only then you will start to pay taxes, and give them until 2027 and so on. We're still in 2026. And when the PNM came in 2015, to be able to treat with that, because we weren't in a position to undo, they introduced this 12.5% royalty so that they would be able to get some kind of money from these energy companies. This government has come into office and reduced that 12.5% royalty to 8%. So again, they're doing the same thing, offering the same sweetheart concessions and depriving the citizenry of much needed revenue, and then coming to squeeze your cojones by increasing the fines for traffic offenses by 100+%, and increasing certain fees with respect to customs and all of these different things, and driving up the price of everything, the price of alcohol, imposing these unreasonable fees and so on to the bars and all of that. So to make up money, they're squeezing you to make up for what they have now allowed the energy companies who have the money and who could afford to pay. So when it is that we are seeing what is taking place in the Point Lisas industrial estate with Titan and with Nutrien and Methanex and all these, and then we have the US government coming and saying, or representatives of them saying, well, the Point Lisas industrial estate is a good place to set up these things. What do you think happening there? If they leave, we will replace them with something. Easy pickings. Easy. So they couldn't care less. Right? So they don't really seem to be interested in the downstream anymore. They just want to focus on the gas come here. And wherever is wherever, we sell the gas and we make more money, and then they boast about profits and all of that. And what are they spending it on? God alone knows. Shelton is saying always a blackface promoting UNC shenanigans. Brian Batista is saying we in TNT, especially the Africans, don't care what happens, especially when it is done by the UNC. If PNM supporters were as, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, if we were as vociferous in our advocacy when the UNC is in power as the UNC supporters are when the PNM is in power, many things happening in this country that PNM supporters should be talking about. But you know what I come to realize? Whereas you would see UNC supporters on Facebook and they commenting, they sharing, they couldn't care who see that they share, who see that they comment. PNM supporters, they don't want to share because I don't want my friends to see that I shared this. I don't want my friends to know that I'm a PNM supporter. I want to remain neutral. So I'm going to be guarded in what I comment, because all my friends who follow me on Facebook will see my comment and they will know. And then to hell with that, UNC supporters don't care. Share it. If your friends have an issue with it, well, then that's their problem. Trini Bree is saying the PNM needs to find a legal way to stop these AI data centers. It can be done. So Trini Bree, as I said, we are looking into these things, but as I would have mentioned earlier, we have sought the legal counsel of certain senior counsel attorneys on matters related to the parliament, all right, certain happenings in the parliament, and these senior counsel are afraid to give us even legal advice because they don't want to be blacklisted, they don't want to be targeted by the UNC. At the end of the day, some of them just thinking about the bottom line, the bread and butter. Well, I don't want to say the bread and butter because a lot of them filthy rich, but they don't want to lose out on briefs, right? They don't want their legal practices to be maligned or attacked by the UNC. And so they're just taking a hands-off approach that between now and 2030, they're staying out of the politics. So that's the challenge that we have. So it's just the few attorneys that we have who are still loyal to the party and who are willing to stretch their necks out. So we can depend on. Slimy Show says they got teeth a whole lot in feasibilities. Oh yes, but I will tell you, $5 million they came. Smith came for in the media review for fees to pay salaries for feasibility study and consultants. $5 million. He didn't ask for that, as I said, in October, which means that when they accrued that $5 million, either between first quarter last year and the first quarter last year and the second quarter this year, or that is consultancy fees and salaries that they intend to pay for this thing. If it is these people want to come and invest here, why is it that your government is spending all of these millions of dollars on these things? Let these people pay. But that's what they will do, and they already started it. 5 million by 20 million, and that's just the start. But he will answer come budget in October, though. PF Cutter says 8% is good for the dunce government. You're forgetting for them less is more. So true. Slimy said Argentina is going to win. It's rigged. We rebuke that. Folks, we will chat again next week, Sunday, God's willing. All right. I don't anticipate traveling for another couple of months, but then, when the opportunity presents itself. Yeah. So enjoy your game. I hope the team that you are supporting, let me not say that. Forget that. Okay? Whatever the outcome is. Trinidad needs to focus on going digital, networking all data from every sector instead of investing in AI data centers. So true. There's the same government that said they won't support going cashless. Watch and see how they change their mind. Colimo Budu Singh is saying, produce the stubborn invoices and receipts. They are facts. Don't worry, we will produce it. PF Cutters is saying, what's the update with the 50 million US refinery study? They ain't talking about that. We'll talk about the refinery. We'll chat again soon, folks. Next week, Sunday, God's willing. All right? Take care. Enjoy your week. Have a productive one and enjoy the rest of your Sunday and your football.